Hi, Kimberly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
All right, so tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Got it. So, my name is Kimberly Brown. I'm the founder of Brown Leadership. I am a career and leadership coach and founder of a learning and development company. I've been doing this for a very long time. And I always say I'm passionate about helping people navigate the world of work with ease. That is always my stick. So, no matter what context I'm in, that is the work that I've been working on.
Amazing. And today we're going to be taking your focus into one specific area, which is all about reputation narrative. I really love the word reputation because I think it's so important, especially at work. And you've said that your reputation is built in the quote, quiet moments when you're not in the room. What are the first steps someone should take to really intentionally shape the unseen narrative? Meaning, like, think about what people are saying about them when they're not in the room.
So the first thing I tell folks that you have to figure out what are they saying? And we need to do an audit. I'm really big on doing a 360 for yourself, even if your company doesn't do it. And honestly, I don't know that many companies that actually do a really good 360 process. So I recommend reaching out to people up, down, and across the organization and asking them for some feedback on you. And even if it's as quick as like, what are three words you would use to describe your experience working with me? Or could you give me like a one liner about your experience working with me or what you've observed over the past few years, just so you can see and be able to really articulate, is what I'm giving what I want it to give? Is it the experience I want people to have? When I talk about personal branding, I always joke and say it's the experience you provide to other people. Like it doesn't matter what's happening at home, what's happening with your friends, your family. What is the experience that people have with you? And to start, you have to understand, is it congruent with what you want? So I recommend doing an audit. And then once you know, is it giving what you thought it was? Then there's very small tweaks that you probably need to make. Maybe you want to double down on some things. But if you realize that it is nowhere near the experience you want others to have with you, then it's starting to figure out what are the moments that people get to experience you. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, like, what if you feel like, well, one, how do you determine who to ask in this audit? But then also, I do feel like it's so hard to get really honest feedback, especially negative feedback or constructive feedback. What advice you have in regards to that? Because, like, for example, we just did performance reviews at my work, and we asked everybody does
Mhm.
peer reviews, and they asked about strength and an area of opportunity. To be honest, you're so like fatigued with how many reviews you're doing that even if you had something negative to say, it's like, okay, now I've got to find a constructive way to say this and write it. And I'm writing versus saying, so I think about like, I understand why it is hard to get this feedback, I guess is what I'm saying.
It is. It definitely is hard. So first, I like to target people who you already have a relationship with, because then if you're targeting someone who you have a relationship with, and you kind of explain, like, I'm really looking to work on my reputation, work on my personal brand, and I really like some feedback from you. Make it quick and make it easy. Don't give them a 20, 30 question like traditional performance appraisal, because yes, that is exhausting and we are tired of it, especially managers who have a lot of team. I totally understand. That's why I'm always like, give me three words to describe. And if you want to say three positive or three things I can work on, or even I like the start, stop, continue thing as well. I think that's a really easy framework to use to get feedback. What do you need to start doing? What should you continue doing? And what should you stop doing? And if you can, make it anonymous. I like when the feedback is assigned to a person, but I also understand that people get really caught up on how do you articulate that stop part or the negative part, because they don't want any retaliation. They don't want someone to take it the wrong way. But if you can make it anonymous, just in a Google document, I would put that there. And if you're able to say, are you like you more senior than me? Are we at the same level? Are you below? Or take all that out if you really want it to be truly anonymous, just so you can understand. Because I understand that some people, how they showcase themselves when people are super senior versus when someone is junior can be completely different, which is why I like to make sure you're getting a bunch of commentary from all around you. And you want the commentary to come from folks who directly interface with you and your work. So I would pick the people who have the most experience working with you, not the person who you really want their feedback and see you one time, but the folks who really get to see you day to day, because they'll have the biggest understanding of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious too, can you talk about, just in your own experience, sort of evolving from um, with your career and thinking about your own reputation, how did you think about how you were going to craft it, whether you were in corporate or now as a business owner? And then how did you proactively make sure that you were, I guess, directing the reputation narrative?
So for me, it's all about figuring out the moments that will have the impact that you need. One of the biggest questions I get when I'm speaking at an organization, someone will always pull me to the side, especially if we're talking about personal branding. They won't say it in person, like in front of everyone. They're always going to ask, like, I messed up. What do I do if I messed up and my manager no longer trusts me? And I'm trying my hardest, but I am now like martyred with this mistake that I made, and they won't give me any leeway, blah, 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 the whole thing. And it's the same advice I'll give now is that we need to find those moments where we can create a corrective experience. That's a term that I got in therapy, honestly, from dating when we were talking about that during that time. It's that when you've had heartbreak or anything bad happen, in order for your body to be okay and remind you that you are still safe, you need to have a corrective experience because our brain is still developing all these worst case scenarios. Our brain and our body still remembers all the bad things that happened. So in the workplace, same thing. You need to think about how can you create a corrective experience. So what led up to you making that mistake? And when is that experience going to be recreated? So maybe you flubbed in front of a client. So what are your next client meetings where you need to come super prepared? And what are the steps you can take to be able to show your manager, show those stakeholders, the people who you got feedback from, that you have now changed, you've evolved, you are looking at it from a different lens. And it takes time. The same way they say in therapy, like sometimes it's not one time that you can create that corrective experience. Sometimes it's got to be 5 times for every time you've messed up. You can't, there's not a magic science behind it, but it's about building trust and letting people see you do something different. I'm not sure if you give it this advice too, Lauren, but one of the things I always say is that it's very easy for an external candidate to sell themselves into a role against an internal because the external candidate has no personal brand at that company. So they can essentially sell water to a fish about how amazing they are, what they'll do, all the things. It sounds so incredible, so sexy. They're so excited about this new person. But the internal person is always at a disadvantage because you're working against the brand that you've already built. So if you are going to be doing something different, you have to essentially sell that you're going to be a different person, do all these different things when they're like, hey, like we've been working with you for like 2 years now. All we've seen is A, but now you're saying you're going to do B. That's why I'm like, you have to kind of show people a little bit, a few times that, oh, no, no, I'm capable of doing this because it's so hard to sell when you're that internal candidate.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, if you are actively trying to kind of rebrand yourself, you're trying to think of a new reputation. So let's use an example. Let's say you don't think of yourself as a very strategic person, and you're like, I want whatever this promotion is in the next year. So the new reputation I want out there is that I am really strategic. I am a really good executor. What are like some things that you examples that somebody would do? Is it something you would like say it and you would also do it? Would you like start dropping the word strategy more often? Would you describe yourself as like, I really like strategy? Like, what are some of the things you would do to start planting these seeds?
I think it's both sides. You have to talk about it, be able to articulate who you are, what you want, the type of work that you want to do. So you have to be able to talk about those things, but it also needs to be backed up with the actions. Because if it doesn't have the actions, then you're just known for being a talker. Like, oh yeah, they're super strategic. But when I asked them to work on this project, they couldn't even put together a good, better, best. They didn't anticipate the needs of the client. They didn't have a backup plan when it went
Right.
left. So it has to be on both sides. I think buzzwords are great, but you have to be able to walk the talk, walk the walk, and talk the talk at the same time.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things is sort of when you come into a company and to your point, you've like sold this vision of who you are and everyone's really hyped up and then it's like, wait, you just become a person who's like a lot of talk, but I don't see the action on the other side. Probably worse is when you're the person who also like stops the good action from happening, but so I see the disadvantage when you're an internal person in the interview process, but I also see the huge advantage of when you're an internal person and you're trying to work on your reputation right then and there. It's like you have this opportunity, to your point, to walk the walk, talk the talk, and follow through. I'm curious to, when it comes to professionals assessing the current narrative that exists about them, especially because so much happens behind closed doors, is there anything that you can tell that people think about you or know about you without it being explicitly said? Is it like, okay, the projects you get volunteered for? Like, are there any like signs that your reputation is not what you want it to be without doing a full review or something more formal?
I do think that if you feel like you're being like pushed into a corner, I keep on like moving my hands as I'm thinking this. Like if you feel like you're being pushed into a corner that you don't want to be in, I think that is a really good sign and an indicator that something about you, your brand, your experience is putting you this way versus the other way. And it could be because you're killing it in that area. Like I can always identify with, I've had that person who they may not like this task, but they kill it. And
Yeah.
I trust them. So therefore, I'm going to always give them this. But it's not until they speak up and they articulate something different that I'm like, oh, okay. Let me try to make sure that you also get to work in this arena. I remember during my time working in big finance, I had someone on my team who was a beast at numbers. She could slice and dice some data like no one I'd ever met in my life. And she not only just slice and dice the data like in Excel, but she can create the narrative. And when I tell you, like, people just wanted her to do that all the time. But she wanted to be seen, like you said in the example earlier, as more strategic. She wanted to be a part of telling the story. And she had to talk to me about, like, hey, like, I know, like, I can do these reports and this is really great, but I'd love to be involved in actually sharing it and being in the meeting. So it's like, oh, okay, like, I didn't know that was what you wanted to do. Because some people just want to be in the data, crunching it, making the deck, and go forth into the light, like, don't call me again. But she wanted to be seen that way. So it's like, okay, like we can work with this. We can shift things around and allow you to create it. Also share it to give her more presence and ownership over her work. So I think it's a combination of where are you being pushed? Is that aligned with where you want to go? And if not, then how can you articulate that, you may have a different vision or you want to tiptoe into something different to start being known for a more expansive role than what you're being pushed into?
Yeah, like sometimes it's as simple as being like articulating, this is what I want to do. This is the direction I want to head.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes the simple advice seems like the most obvious, but it's important that we mention it because you might not have thought about it. Like maybe it's like, have you talked about it? Have you shared it, articulated the, whatever reputation narrative you're trying to go? Have you done this assessment and this 360 review? Have you actually followed through on the things that you said you want to be known for? You've been doing all those things for 6+ months, I think, and you're still struggling. I get when people who are internal feel like I just can't shake the reputation I had because maybe I've worked here for 10 years and I've changed a
Yeah.
lot or whatever. Like I do get that. And I think sometimes there's a reason why people are like, I'm ready for a fresh start. You were talking about like therapy and relationships. I do get that too, but um,
Yes.
I don't think that's like, oftentimes I think that's people's first option. And I think what I've learned is that you take yourself wherever you go. And so, like, learning how to define the narrative and the reputation that you have at work is a skill set that will serve you no matter where you are. And sometimes it's actually really good to test it out in the internal place that you are right now. And if it's still not a fit, then you're like, well, at least I've mastered this skill and I'll be better at the next place I go to.
Every
Um,
single time. Growing where you are planted is underrated. I feel like
yeah,
we're so
me
easy
too.
to move. I think not only are you bringing yourself, but you have all the relationships, all the people. You have to build all that stakeholder capital, build all those relationships someplace else that you go. And it'll take you, sometimes it could take you longer. And
Yeah.
if you kind of dug deep, I tell anyone who works with me, I'm like, I want you to suck that job dry. And people are like, what? I was like, yes, get every daggone thing you can out of where you are before you leave. Now, if you're in a position where like you've burned all your relationships, it's really toxic, then yes, you have to start over. You've got to go. But if you have a pretty good experience, you have people who still like, know, and trust you, use everything, use all that professional development, get on every project, do all the things to get all the experience so you can leverage it elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing I have noticed at work is that sometimes if you build your personal brand externally, it kind of helps with the reputation internally. Like I almost feel like if you're struggling to get noticed internally, it's like, okay, start building a presence externally and maybe it will catch on. So I want to switch gears a little bit to personal branding and visibility. I know that you've helped a lot of professionals build platforms that match the caliber of their work. What are the most maybe overlooked components of building a strong public presence?
So, what are the most, oh, that's such a good question. What are the most overlooked components? I think the first step is that people don't understand where to go. So one, I tell folks, let's get clear on what your career goals are and what visibility means to you. So for me, I love public speaking. Many of my clients, same thing. Like they love teaching the workshop. And it's like, where can you go where you can do more of what matters, more of what gets you excited and aligns to your ultimate career goals. So for me, I spoke in industry in higher ed because I knew the more I did there, the more relationships I built there, the more I'd be able to get exposure to different schools, exposure to different people who could potentially hire me. And that's really where I began. So I tell people, let's get clear. Is it writing? Is it speaking? Is it social media? And what is the ultimate goal? Are you doing it just because you want to have fun? And you just like it? Are you doing it because you want job opportunities? I think it's getting clear on what do you want out of visibility because I think that we're in a very like heart culture and it's like okay, beyond that, what is it? What is the gratification that you want to receive out of having more visibility? And how can we align that to your goals so that you're still moving in the right direction? And I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't actually say, make sure that it's okay with your organization. Make
Yeah.
sure that you know the rules, the regulations, because I think it can also backfire. I know I've personally had some not so nice experiences when it comes to growing visibility where it was not okay and they didn't like it, even though I played by the rules. So I tell folks, make sure you know the temperament of your organization and what your legal counsel and communication says you can and cannot do. And
Yeah.
just be prepared regardless. For me, it was important, so I still did it. But I knew what my ultimate goal was. My ultimate goal is where I am now. So it was okay for me to take that risk. I still played by the rules, but there were lots of unsavory conversations in the process as I was doing it.
That's very is a very good reminder. When you said about where, I immediately thought about like social media, LinkedIn, maybe even internal meetings. There's so many channels to be visible. How do you recommend people choose, once they maybe know their why behind what type of visibility they're getting and how it matches to their goals? How do you recommend people choose where to show up, how and really how to show up? And let's make the assumption that their company had said it's okay. You can be visible on LinkedIn or whatever.
I like to build it in steps. I think some people may be like, oh, put me on like the 10,000 person stage tomorrow. But if you are brand new to visibility, I like to think about where can you be visible first within your company and then scale to external audiences. So what are you able to teach? What are you able to educate on? How are you able to support? I love folks getting involved in their internal ERG groups. Absolutely love that. What events, what things are they teaching? How are they bringing people together? How can you get involved teaching there, volunteering on the board? How can you do things there? How can you volunteer to share your work at your town hall? Most company-wide town halls have some type of like learning component where they're teaching or sharing, giving kudos. How can you lead there? How can you lead the meetings with your clients, with your team? Lead small things there and then start branching out into I love professional organizations doing things on a state level, regional, then national. So I like to scale in lockstep with things that you're interested in. And there's professional organizations that are very much like industry specific, but I think there's professional organizations just for women or just professionals or that are more agnostic. So I like to grow and expand based upon your interest too.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the coaches on the Career Contessa platform are people who work in organizations, and one of the ways they're scaling their advice is they are now a coach on Career Contessa. To your point, like, is it coaching? Is it teaching workshops? Is it just being a member and showing up to the events of whatever organization that you're really interested in? And it could be anything from career development, sort of broad like that, to a specific function that you have. I know that I feel like every industry has these, and it's I also think just matching it to what you're interested in, right? So like you're not going to show up to an organization where you're like, I'm only doing this so I can put it on my LinkedIn profile.
Exactly.
You have to be really interested in it, show up, engage, be active. And guess what? If you're like, well, I really want to start sharing on LinkedIn and post, well, you will the more you engage with that thing. You'll have natural content to talk about. I think that people who are just trying to like put something out there to put something out there, it feels like that's what you're doing when people are reading the content too. So it's good to find something that you're genuinely interested in. I see this a lot, especially on LinkedIn, where it's like people are not quite sure what to talk about. And it's like, talk about your career advice. Are you a working mom and you're really passionate about that topic? Are you obsessed with content marketing? Talk about that. Are you obsessed with interview prep because you work in HR and this is something you see go wrong all the time? So I think the other thing I've noticed with this too is like find people who are doing it really, really well that you admire, and you're like, that is part of the career goal I have, is something really similar to them. And not to copy it, but to be inspired and almost use it as like inspiration to create your own blueprint. At least that's something
Yeah.
that has helped me as well. Um,
100%. When I work with clients one-on-one, one of the things I always ask them is like, who are 10 folks who are doing it just like you today? Because there's 10, I promise you. No matter what it is, that we can find 10 folks. I think we all feel like we're super unique and no one has ever done this before, but there are 10 folks who would be put in your industry, no matter how hot your take is. But then out of those 10, what is your special sauce? I
right.
believe we all have special sauce, but like the bigger, grander idea may not be as unique. And once you look at this, do an analysis. How are they showing up? Where are they speaking? Are they writing? Are they speaking? Are they sharing different hot takes on articles? I think sometimes we feel like the idea has to be really unique, but you can just reshare someone's post and add your own thoughts on it. Of course,
Yeah,
citing who had the original thought, who put that there, because that's important. But you can also just share your insight on it. And that also is a form of like putting yourself out there and increasing your visibility.
absolutely. Okay, I want to move into sort of leadership impact. Legacy is kind of the word I'm thinking of. Because you talk often about legacy and not just career milestones. So what is the difference between building a career and building a legacy?
So when I think about building a legacy, the biggest thing that comes to mind is always, what are you leaving at the company? What are you leaving when you retire, when you leave this role? And again, it's not just retire. I said both. I said when you leave this role, leave this company, or retire, all of those things. What are you leaving? What is the stamp that you are leaving on this organization? So when you're gone, they're like, oh my gosh, when Lauren was here, she did. And they're able to easily articulate the impact, the project, whatever it was. That's what I think of when I think of legacy. And we only really ask very senior leaders that question, which always drives me crazy. I think we should be thinking about legacy much earlier on. I honestly think from mid-level forward, we should start thinking about what is the legacy? What are you leaving at the company? When we're thinking about career, I think the biggest difference is you're kind of acquiring skills for yourself, acquiring experiences for yourself, versus a legacy touches more than just you. This is much more aligned to something longer term versus just the skills that you're acquiring, the skills and experiences that are really just for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's funny. It's like there's job, then there's career, and then there's legacy. And
Yeah.
I think of like job is sort of like you're not quite at that career level yet. What you just described, it would be one layer below that. That is really interesting. I think important for us to keep in mind, like, what do you want people to say about you? I mean, this whole conversation is sort of like, what are people saying about you when you're not around, when you're not in the room at work, when you
Mhm.
leave the office? Like, what do you want? How do you want people to talk about you and describe you? I think another thing I was just thinking for, I talk about this in my book, going on like a listening tour. And I feel like a listening tour is usually something I encourage people to do when they're in a job search, but really a listening tour could be something you are doing sort of throughout your career to listen to how people talk about you. What projects do they volunteer you for? What are the things that people go to over and over again? And I think back to one of your earlier points, this is not something that just happens in an hour on a Thursday
Mhm.
afternoon. This is sort of like, keep a private Slack channel or a notes list on your phone where you're kind of tracking down. And then you're going to start to see themes come out of this between your reviews, between these little notes that you're taking. Um,
Mhm.
and that starts to, I think, paint this picture and then allows you to think about that reputation, that legacy, etc. I need everything in like a methodical list in my brain. So I'm like,
Yes.
I need to make this more step by step for me. Okay, as we wrap up, I'm very curious. Can you share a moment in your own career when you realized your reputation needed to evolve and when you had to reclaim really your own narrative, and what did you do?
Oh gosh. Okay. Um, so during my last corporate job, I got some feedback. People thought I was a little bit of a, what's the word I can say that doesn't have a curse in it? They thought I was a little hard, a little rough around the edges. Like when I had an idea, they were like, you just gun it. Like it does not matter. You are going to steamroll every person, place, or thing when you know the idea is good and drive forward to execution. And my role with it was really strategic. So they needed someone who was going to have the idea, bring it through, bring it to life. But my boss at the time sat me down, was like, we need you to work on your socialization. People need to feel like they are brought along with you on this journey. Now, we know that they may not know what input to add. They may not even have the input needed to able to contribute to the idea. But people here like to feel like they are brought along on this journey, and they are part of it. And that's only going to help you grow and excel in your career. And for me, that was like, it was hard feedback to hear because I feel like the socialization process, if you're in an organization that really values socialization, it slows you down.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's that listening tour, especially when you're having people who want to listen and hear the idea, and you're like, you don't even understand this area, but everybody loves you. So I have to let you talk about it, even though I know that won't work. But I got to sit here in this meeting for an hour and listen to
Gotta
all your
check this
ideas.
box. Yep.
Yes, and then politely turn you down in in the ideas that explain why we're doing it this way. But there are some meetings in there that are helpful, and some people can really add and elevate your idea, which makes it better. So for me, I really had to work on building that time in to socialize the ideas. And in this season, in this organization, it was a really hard push season of a lot of execution that was needed. I always tell folks it was one of those seasons where end of day really and truly means end of day. So let's try and get this done by 9 p.m., by 10 p.m. And we're going to present it to the chief so and so at like 7 a.m. because it was a global role. So 7 was one of those good times where not too early for some folks, not too late for others. So we did it at 7. So it was really one of those, it was a really interesting match of how can I push forward to drive because we're accountable to the result, but also socialize and bring people along with me. Tough feedback to hear, but I think it definitely grew me as a professional and also taught me different senior level stakeholder presentation strategies because some leaders wanted to hear the idea like it was done. And I had a few leaders who wanted to hear the idea like it was half baked
Yeah,
because they really appreciated being able to add their stamp on the idea or just know that it wasn't final. And because of the level of role that I had, it was polarizing. Each leader almost had to have a different executive summary. Some wanted the 25 slides because they do a pre-read. Others needed the executive summary, and then I had to talk through it because it needed to feel like it was still in progress. Even though I knew that my boss was going to have us actioning it later today, we just needed to hear that they were interested and then we
right.
could go. So it was a really interesting season, hard feedback for me to hear because I didn't like hearing that people felt like I was hard around the edges, that I was like, I was going to drive no matter what. Um, and it was a teachable moment on what my reputation was, and how to be visible and seen as a strategic leader, but also as someone who truly liked to partner. And I did. It was just a stressful time, and that stress was coming off in meetings with leaders where they felt like I was just hard and like, oh no, no, Kimberly, if she said she's doing it this way, she's just going to do it this way, which
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily the case. But it definitely changed me as a leader. I think for the better after I got over my feelings being hurt a little bit.
I I love that story, and I do think it's so like realistic to how a lot of people feel, especially in corporate, where you're like, I know it's going to lead to here, but I have to do all these other steps beforehand, and there's sort of this like, yeah, but this is just sort of how the game is played a little bit. I mean,
Mhm.
look, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or you work in corporate, there's some part of the quote career game that you're not going to love. And I can understand why being told socialization or even like influence, like you need to have a better influence. I
Mhm.
think what's hard about all these words too is that they feel very like, okay, but what is this step? It's not like someone telling you,
Yeah.
Kimberly, you're bad at math, learn what 2 plus 2 is,
Hmm.
right? You're like, this is a skill that doesn't really have any rules. It's not very black and white. It's very much a gray area. I think you handled it really well, but I also understand why the feedback was also really helpful because ultimately it's like, you want to get ahead in your career. This is sort of quote part of that game. And learning how to do that is going to be really good for your reputation too. And once you have that reputation of being quote a partner and not so hard or whatever it is that they said, it's like they're going to say yes to more things, right? So
Exactly.
it ends up being this win-win in the end, even if it's a very like roundabout way of going there. So I thank you for sharing that because it's so interesting. And also it's good, like I like when people share this when like you're a career expert and you even had this career challenge. Like it's
Oh
just a
yeah.
really good human reminder that You can think about this stuff, study it, help other people with it, and it still happens in your own life, you know? So, okay, Kimberly, as we wrap up, tell everybody where I mean, you have an amazing book, you have a podcast, tell everybody all the things so they can follow your work and engage with you.
Definitely. So, okay, my book, Next Move, Best Move, Transitioning into a Career You'll Love, available everywhere you can find books, generally on sale on Amazon. Please feel free to grab it. It really helps you build a 2-year career strategy. You can find out about me and all my things, KimberlyBOnline.com, and on all the socials, Kimberly B, the letter B, online. And my company, Brown Leadership, brownleadership.com, if you're looking for more corporate development at your company.
Amazing. We'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.